Hey everyone, I'm Josh Biddick, and this is the first ever episode of Kinda Funny Weekly Review. The goal of this show is to take the content that comes out from Kinda Funny on Monday through Friday and break it down into bite-sized chunks, that way you, the best friends, can kinda know what's going on. I know that right now Kinda Funny has a whole lot of content coming out, and sometimes you might not be able to watch all of it. So hopefully with this show, you can see the key points of each show, that way you know what you might want to go look into. Say you weren't going to check out KFAF this week, but you hear that Andy's got this crazy segment, so you need to go watch that. Now you know. Or maybe there was a really awesome question on Kinda Funny Games Daily that you need to know the answer to. This way you know which shows you can, so kind of pick and choosing the best Kinda Funny content that fits your needs. For those of you who don't know, January is Kinda Funny's 4th anniversary, so they are releasing more content than ever. It's awesome and they are growing at an exponential rate. With that growth though, it might mean that it's harder for new best friends to jump in. They might not know the mass amount of content that Kinda Funny has, and they also might not know what shows fit them best. Hopefully with Kinda Funny Weekly Review, you'll be able to see what's out there and you can kind of pick what you want to see. I know that sometimes it can be intimidating because you don't know what's out there. People may only watch Party Mode and not have any idea about Kinda Funny podcasts, or Internet Explorers, or even Debatable. There's so much new amazing content that I want to try to highlight it all so you, the best friends, are best equipped to see as much as you want. Before we get started, we do have a little bit of housekeeping. As I said earlier, January is the Kinda Funny's 4th anniversary, and for the whole month of January, they're doing some fundraising to kind of help Kinda Funny grow. You can go to patreon.com/kindafunny or patreon.com/kindafunnygames to check out about all the new shows and big announcements. Right now, the biggest thing is they're changing their membership tiers. They've got now bronze, silver, gold, and the coveted platinum. Each tier has its own benefits you can choose from. So by going to patreon.com/kindafunny and patreon.com/kindafunnygames, you can learn about each one of these memberships and see which one you're able to do. For every dollar earned in January and new membership pledge, they're going to be using that money to raise for new shows and a Kinda Funny world tour. Right now, they are doing excellent with over $50,000 last we checked, which is a great thing, which means we're going to be seeing Kinda Funny go around the world for meet and greets to come meet us best friends. So that's all we have for housekeeping. Let's get started with the show. Alright, so we're going to start with Monday, and starting on Monday we've got Kinda Funny Games Daily. Hosts are Greg and Tim, and we're going to start this episode covering the Robo Report. The boys start with a story from Gita Jackson of Kotaku, reporting that Nintendo has released a statement that Toadette is the only person who can wear the Super Crown, essentially cutting fan-made favorite Bowsette from the new Super Mario Bros. Canon. Next, they talk about a new Alien game that'll be coming out for mobile. The story comes from Jason Schreier over at Kotaku. Bethesda and Westworld have settled their Fallout Shelter clone. This story comes from Eddie at GameStop. The next big story of an Overwatch player faking their identity from Rebecca Valentine over at GamesIndustry.biz. Epic is bringing back the 14 Days of Fortnite by Kevin over at GameSpot. And as always, wrapping out the Roper Report, they talk about the games that came out for Monday. Next, we're moving over to Reader Mail, where I want to highlight one question that came from Ryan Trimble that reads, I love that you all are doing another KF showcase, but your E3 content is some of the most highly anticipated things of the year. Do you think the extra work of putting together the showcase will take away from your E3 coverage? I think this is a really great question that a lot of best friends might be wondering. I know I had the same question myself with the announcement of another KF showcase. The question to answer is basically that by the time E3 comes out, showcase video will be done. All I have to do is press play, so Kinda Funny will still be able to cover E3. For Squad Up on this episode, Chad is looking for people to FaceTime to talk about games. If you're interested in chatting with this best friend, hit him up on Twitter at @RespawnAimFire. That's @RespawnAimFire. The show ends as always with You're Wrong, but we're not going to go into that. Next, we're going to move on to the Kinda Funny Games Cast. Hosts for this episode are Greg, Tim, Jared, and for the first time on this episode, Fran Marabella III. The show opens with what everyone was playing over break. Fran was playing the game Gris, a nice little relaxing game. Greg got sucked back into Fortnite. Greg also talks about what it was like to play Diva Song in Beat Saber, and how much fun it was playing a song that he knows. Jared was able to teach his friend's child the wonders of video games thanks to the power of the Nintendo Switch. Next we have topic of the show, Toss. It was your 5 most anticipated games of 2019. Here are the lists. Fran's list goes as follows: Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, Animal Crossing, Division 2, Resident Evil 2, and Anthem. Jared's list goes as follows: Crackdown 3, Ori and the Will of the Wisps, Bloodstained, Resident Evil 2, and lastly, Jared wants to show off the game that he has been working on. He thinks it would be really important to him to show this intimate project to the other hosts of the Kinda Funny Gamescast. I, for one, am extremely excited to see what Jared's done. Greg's list is Resident Evil 2, Ape Out, The Outer Worlds, Animal Crossing, and Division 2. Tim, Star Wars, Jedi Fallen Order, In the Valley of Gods, Pokemon Gen 8, Capcom is what he says, and pretty much everything that is coming out of Capcom this year, he's super excited, but mainly DMC5, and of course, much like myself, Kingdom Hearts 3. Now that's all for the Kinda Funny Games cast, pretty much the big things they covered. We're gonna move on to Internet Explorers. For the very first time, we see the Internet Explorers return to their very own show. The garbage truck on fire that was the morning show has evolved into this new show. Inside the ramblings and craziness are actual segments for this show, so let's break it down for this episode. Replacing the news is a segment called In Other News. For this segment, the boys highlight that Daniel Kruba, formerly of IGN UK, has left to start his own channel called RKG. Next up, in the most Internet Explorers fashion, they look at a BuzzFeed list for 17 brain-shattering optical illusions. Moving forward from here, we have the wonders of WorldStar. While Tim did check to make sure that the webpage was safe to look at, there was a big debate on whether or not any of the videos were actually safe to watch. After this debate goes on, Tim introduces a new segment, Clickbait. They go into zurgnet.com and look up the top clickbait titles and see how many pages are actually in each of these headlines before you get to whatever they're talking about. The next bit is when everyone loves fun clips. Future fun clips will be provided by Patreon members who supported at the bronze level, but Tim provided this clip. Watch a man who dangles from a hang glider and realizing he's not harnessed it. I know this video has been going around the internet, so maybe you have seen it. Now you get to see their reactions. After this, Tim introduces another new segment called People r/funny. The Internet Explorers look at the r/funny subreddit and decide if the first few posts are funny or not. Viewers are then educated with the new word of the day, obfuscate, to render unclear or unintelligible. The show is then ended with the last two segments called Chat Room and Sub-Only Chat Room, basically where they're reading from the chat. That's all for Monday. We're going to take it over to Tuesday. For Tuesday, we're starting off with more Kinda Funny Games Daily. Today's hosts are the busiest lady in the business, Angie Renee, and the verified one, Tim Geddes. We start off with the Roper Report. Sony releases a statement saying that over the holiday season, sales of PS4 surpassed 91.6 million units worldwide. Resident Evil 2 Remake gets a one-shot 30-minute demo, and that story came from Cyril Vasquez at Game Informer. Blizzard quietly announced that Soldier 76 of Overwatch is gay, and that write-out came from Ashley O of Polygon. With a shorter Roper Report, we move on to Reader Mail. One question I want to highlight was asked by David Scott, and the paraphrased version is how many games can fit in a games as a service model before there isn't enough players to distribute between them all. With Squad Up, we have ChazJS looking for some best friends to play Destiny with. His gamertag is ChazJS, that's CHAZJS, so hit him up with a message. As always, the show ends with You're Wrong, so now it's time to move on to Kinda Funny in Review. On this episode, the team gets together to finish the Spider-Man in Review series, with Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. First, we want to shout out Cameron Ken for making this awesome intro for the video. Basically, if you haven't seen it, I highly recommend checking it out. You can go over on his Twitter, at Cameron Ken, it's there. It's done in the same style as the Spider-Verse opening, and it's perfectly recreated. Again, you can go over to twitter.com/CameronKen, throw him some sweet and nasty love because he did a stellar job. Can't recommend looking at it enough. So now, the boys go and they break down some of the facts about the movie, release date, directors, and they did some behind-the-scenes stuff looking at it. Greg goes in and they summarize the movie and all sorts of shenanigans ensue. The most important thing that everyone wants to know is the new final rankings of all the Spider-Man movies. So let's break them down. Number 1 is, of course, Spider-Verse. If you have not seen Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, I'm going to interject some of my own stuff. I can't recommend it enough. Probably my favorite Spider-Man movie of all time. It's definitely up there with Homecoming. Again, can't recommend it enough. Number 2 comes in for Amazing Spider-Man 2, 3, Amazing Spider-Man 1, 4, Spider-Man 2, 5 is Venom, 6 is Spider-Man, the first one, and then 7, to no surprise, is Spider-Man 3. So that officially ends Tuesday. Next week, the Kinda Funny Games in Review will be the Fast and the Furious. It's the start of the series, so if you want to be prepared for next Tuesday, go in, watch Fast and Furious, and be ready to have some reviews. Moving on to Wednesday, we're halfway through the week and we have another Kinda Funny Games Daily. The hosts for this episode are Jared and Widow Wednesday's own, the Rogue One, Gary Widow. The Rope Report begins a bit bigger than Tuesday. Matt Kim of US Gamer writes that Division 2 will be on Epic Store, not Steam. This is a pretty big deal. Joe Scrubbles, a made-up name, of IGN writes that Black Mirror's script Bandersnatch was actually a game in itself, and the writer wrote in the Twine game. Nintendo of America Twitter announced that the Switch Online games for the month of January will be Blaster Master and Zelda 2. Jonathan Dornbush of IGN reports that Fantastic Four could be coming to Marvel's Spider-Man. We don't know right now if it's a new suit or some more DLC including Marvel's First Family, Personally, I'm hoping for the latter. Eddie McCook of GameSpot does a write-up of everything that's coming to Assassin's Creed Odyssey in January. Giuseppe Naval of Big Twinfinite reports that PlayStation will be acquiring the Autokinetic tool for game development. And lastly, for the Roper Report, Mike Williams of US Gamer writes that Cory Barlog, the director of God of War, said he had plans for DLC, but it was just too big. In Reader Mail, the question I'd like to highlight comes from user Warm Ice, and they want to know what would be some features that Jared and Gary want to see in next-gen Sony and Microsoft consoles. We move on to the first ever episode of KFAF. The show of utter chaos is hosted by Andy and Nick. To start, they try and actually explain what the show will be, but I think we'll just have to wait and see. Andy recites a story, how he was cut in the shower, and after this chilling tale, Andy records the new hit theme song for their segment, Connect Between 3 and 5. To then play one move each of Connect Between 3 and 5. Each week they'll be coming back and doing one more move until they've completed the world's longest game of Connect Between 3 and 5. Next, Nick gives a very Nick explanation of how Avengers Endgame should end. Warning, and not surprisingly, it gets a bit sexual. Needing a palate cleanser after going inside Nick's mind, Andy has Nick do what he calls the Bird Box Blindfold Beverage Bonanza, where Nick must take shots of random sugary drinks and rate them. Moving right along, we have Ask Andy Anything, where Patreon supporters at the bronze tier or above can submit their questions to the show to be read aloud. Buttholes were said and handstands were done. To round out the show, we have a Photoshop challenge for you to be a part of. This week, you are challenged with putting Kevin into any Marvel poster. If you think you're up to the task, post it to kindafunny.com/KFAF, and the winner will be posted on next week's episode. Moving right along to Thursday, again, we're starting off with more Kinda Funny Games Daily. For the first time ever, we have Andrew Renee hosting with Fran Marabella. Will they talk Destiny? Yeah, you bet. The Roper Report for the day starts out with an announcement from Red Dead Redemption creator Rockstar saying the Red Dead Redemption online beta for their Battle Royale mode is coming. The Academy of Interactive Arts and Sciences announced the DICE Awards 2019 nominations. Don't forget, our very own Greg Miller is joined by Jessica Chobot yet again to host the DICE Awards. So if you got some time, throw him some love and support. Lastly, for the Roper Report, we have some Destiny news that was bound to come. Ryan Gillum of Polygon reports that Bungie caves after Destiny 2 puzzle stumps too many players. We've got some solid questions coming out of Reader Mail. One I would like to highlight comes from Rachel when she asks, now that Epic is starting to flex some serious muscles with Ubisoft announcing they'll be putting the Division 2 on the Epic Games Store, do you think Valve will start to feel the pressure and turn to releasing new installments of one of their amazing IPs? There's no squad up this episode, so we're going to head to the next show. Party mode this week, we have Tim, Nick, Andy, and Greg taking on a 3v3 shooter After Charge. Who will win? Who will lose? But we do get to see the triumphant return of Champ to Champ. Next up is Debatable. In the first ever episode of Debatable, we have host Jared Petty joined by guests Greg Miller and Josh McCouga. This episode, the debate will be over the top 10 90s comedy movies. Josh comes with a strong list. Movies that he was debating were Office Space, Ace Ventura Pet Detective, Dumb and Dumber, Happy Gilmore, Bad Boys, and a Patreon pick from Snowbike Mike, Men in Black, and lastly, Austin Powers' International Man of Mystery. Greg has a pretty interesting list with Tommy Boy, Gremlins 2 The New Batch, Basketball, Billy Madison, Rush Hour, a Patreon pick from Tom Bach, Something About Mary, and American Pie. Through all the debating, Jared comes up with a definitive list that stands at the top 10 of 10, Ace Ventura Pet Detective, 9, Rush Hour, 8, Basketball, 7, Gremlins 2 The New Batch, 6, Office Space, 5, Dumb and Dumber, 4, Bad Boys, 3, Something About Mary, 2, Tommy Boy, and number 1, Austin Powers, International Man of Mystery. With Josh McCouga having more picks in the top 5 than Greg, it means that he is this week's winner of Debatable. Now Jared actually slips in and he tells the viewers what his personal top 10 list was. At number 10, he had Aladdin, 9, Army of Darkness, 8, Clerks, 7, As Good as It Gets, 6, South Park, 5, Toy Story, 4, Office Space, 3, Fargo, 2, The Big Lebowski, and number 1, Groundhog Day. Final day of content is here with Friday, and again, as always, we're starting with Kinda Funny Games Daily. Andrew and Jared are together again to wrap up this week in gaming news. The big news for the day is that Bungie splits from Activision in keeping the rights of Destiny. I read this article written by Colin Stevens over at IGN. Hamza Shaban from the Washington Post reports that Amazon is entering the game streaming space. THQ Nordic gets the rights of Outcast, says Matt Wales from Eurogamer. We move on to Reader Mail. 2 questions today, so we'll read them both. Maverick asks, how many other ways has the Wii been adopted and there is no longer a device to replace it? And Wiz83 asks, is there a more efficient way of speaking to your favorite creators, like through their Patreon? I personally like this question a lot because I think it's one that many of us have, so I recommend going to check it out. The time code for the question is in the description of the episode of Games Daily. There are 2 squad ups for Friday, making up for the 0 that came out on Thursday. First is Elijah on Xbox, whose gamer tag is VM9000, looking for people to play Fortnite, Overwatch, and Anthem when that comes out. And second is Nanobiologist on PC with the tag Very Presidential. That's VEWYPWESIDENTAL. He's also known as Happy_Poo_Time, looking for people to play Rainbow Six Siege, so hit up both of those best friends if you're interested. Now we're moving on to Screencast. Making his hosting debut, we have Kevin Coelho with Screencast, and we could not be more proud of him. Kevin is joined this week by Tim and Nick. The show starts off by them discussing some of the top entertainment news this week. They start off with Joe Otterson of Variety.com, writing that Game of Thrones prequel has rounded out its main cast. Adam Chitwood from Collider tells us that Hobbs and Shaw movie gets an official title. Fast and Furious presents Hobbs and Shaw. Aquaman becomes the highest grossing DC movie worldwide, says J.K. Schmidt of comicbook.com. And then the boys talk a little bit about the Golden Globes and some of the winners. Moving from the Golden Globes, Mary Poppins becomes the topic of conversation. Now there are some spoilers in here, so be warned, but they do have time codes in the description of how long the spoilers are. So you can just go to the end, skip all the spoilers if you don't want to hear them. Last news story is that Margot Robbie has announced that she will be playing Barbie in the live action movie. With the news out of the way, Kevin steers to the big topic of the show. Top 10 movies of 2018. Here's the list breakdown. Nick's list is as such: 10, A Quiet Place, 9, Bohemian Rhapsody, 8, Isle of Dogs, 7, Halloween, 6, A Star is Born, 5, Creed 2, 4, Mission Impossible Fallout, 3, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, 2, Avengers Infinity War, and 1, Vice. Tim's list is 10, Bumblebee, 9, Hereditary, 8, A Quiet Place, 7, Creed 2, 6, 8th Grade, 5, Avengers Infinity War, 4, Flower, 3, Searching, 2, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, and 1, Bodied. Finally, we have Kevin Coelho's list, with number 10 being Super Troopers 2, 9, Hereditary, 8, Mission Impossible Fallout, 7, Ant-Man and the Wasp, 6, Isle of Dogs, 5, Black Panther, 4, Incredibles 2, 3, Deadpool 2, 2, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, and number 1, Avengers Infinity. Next week, there will be another segment that the Bronze Tier members can participate in using 140 characters to tell why they picked their number 1 movie. Finally, Kevin gets a list of movies that are out now on streaming platforms. For Amazon Prime, there's A Beautiful Mind, Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, and 8th Grade starting January 13th. On Netflix, he announces that Happy Feet, Indiana Jones, all of the movies, Jay and Silent Bob, Pan's Labyrinth, Pulp Fiction, The Addams Family, Dark Knight, Departed, The Mummy 1 and 2, Watchmen, Triple X, and Triple X State of the Union, and Solo, A Star Wars Story will all be streaming as well. I personally think that Kevin did a great job with this first episode, and I cannot wait to see how he grows as a host as this show continues. The last show of the week is the first episode of the Kinda Funny podcast. The show's hosts are Greg, Nick, Tim, and as the official 4th chair, the Hispanic heartthrob himself, Andy Cortez. So I want to play a little game. How long it takes to start the show this week. On this episode, the intro starts in at 6 minutes and 27 seconds. So each week, we'll check back in and see how many off-topic conversations actually start before the show really begins. For whatever reason, meatballs are discussed throughout the episode, and if you really want to learn why, they get to talk about it on the pre-show. So if you need a reason to subscribe at the silver tier, here's one for you. Greg tries to make a phone call to Nick, who is on the podcast, to leave him a voicemail reminding him to listen to the Spider-Verse soundtrack, but his voicemail box was full. So if you want to help Nick remember to listen to the soundtrack, send him a tweet at Nick_Sarpino. Needs a lot of help, very busy guy. If we can help him out with this memory thing, I think that'll be great. The boys talk a bit about the shenanigans that happened over the anniversary stream, and Tim tells the story of the picture of Gia being passed out with their metal tin of flaming hot Cheetos next to her. If you haven't seen the picture, here it is. Officers Miller and Scarpino then attempt to explain what they think happened in this crime scene. Andy then goes in to rank his flaming hot foods. The list goes as follows. Number 1 spot is flaming hot fries, 2 hot Cheetos, 3 hot Fritos, 4 hot Funyuns, and 5 hot Lay's. Made a big point to say, not a big fan of hot Lay's. Snacks are then discussed for about the next 10 minutes. Nick then tells a story about doing pull-ups on a basketball hoop that eventually falls over and almost kills a man. Tim and Kevin retell the story about how drunk Paula returns home and can't unbuckle herself from the Uber. Continuing the chain of stories, Tim tells about an experience he had with Unami Burger, a homeless man, and an eaten burger. This leads to some stories about bad restaurant experiences from each one of the hosts, which all also then leads to the gentleman talking about the app Citizen, which is a crowd-funded app that kind of tells you what's going around in your area, crazy things, robberies, fires, things like that, which leads to more stories. Greg now wants to double back to a topic that Tim brought up earlier about bad services at restaurants, and he retells a story about how he and Jen were bouncing around from restaurant to restaurant on New Year's Day, just trying to look for a good breakfast after their hangover from the events before the night. The boys then spend a little bit of time talking about their perfect fast food meal. Now, if you want to check out this part of the podcast, I highly recommend making sure you are not hungry or you're eating a nice burger and fries, because you get a little hungry while listening to it. At least I do. Now, bronze tier Patreon supporters are actually able to send in questions to the podcast, so that's what the next segment's about. The first one they had to answer was what their experience was transitioning into on-camera talent. This question comes from Patreon supporter Blue Bond. Personally, I think it's a great question. I think we've seen a lot of these people really evolve over their first time. Greg's been a host for as long as many of us can remember. Tim kind of evolved from being behind camera to on camera, much did Nick. And now with Andy being official fourth chair of the Kind of Funny podcast, we're kind of going to start to see him grow as well, much like Kevin's going to grow as he starts to do his own show, Screencast. There is a time code in the description of the podcast, so you can try to jump right there to see the question. Drunk on Writing has the next question, and he asked the group to describe their ideal studio. We had some really solid questions this week on the podcast, so if you're able to subscribe to the bronze tier, you could be one of these questions that's right on the show. And this wraps up the first episode of the Kind of Funny podcast, as well as this week's worth of Kind of Funny content. Alright, so that was this week's episode, and I hope you enjoyed what you saw, and thank you so much for watching. Hopefully now you kind of have an idea of what was going on this week for Kind of Funny, and maybe you have a show you want to check out, which would be great. So, I know this episode was a little rough. It's still a work in progress. It's something that I'm going to continue to do my best to get better each and every week for it. If there's something that you want to see or something you want to see differently, please let me know. I'll write something down in the comments or hit me up on Twitter at Josh Biddick. I really want to do my best to make this show as good as I can for the Kind of Funny community. So if there's something you want to see or something you want to see less of, please let me know. If you think that I can change up the way I'm breaking down Kind of Funny games daily, or if you want to see different articles from the podcast, or you want to see things breaking down more or highlighted more of the best friends, please let me know and I'll do my best to make that fit in. Like I said, it's still a work in progress. My biggest thing is I wanted to get this episode up before the second week of Kind of Funny new content for January really started. So I was kind of racing against the clock, but like I said, I'm going to be doing better to make sure each week is better than the last. And for the last time, remember that January is Kind of Funny's 4th anniversary. So that means the fundraiser is going on all month. If you go to patreon.com/kindoffunny or patreon.com/kindoffunnygames and donate $1 or increase your current pledge, that money is going to go in to making more shows, better content, hopefully eventually a new studio for them, which would be fantastic. And of course, like I said, that Kind of Funny world tour for more meet and greets across the whole globe for us best friends. So that's all from me. Again, I've been Josh Biddick. You can follow me on twitter.com at Josh Biddick. Like, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bar. We're going to be putting out one of these once a week. Right now, the goal is to get them out on Monday. Or if you think Sunday, whatever is better. I don't know what's best for people to watch content. So if you have any ideas, let me know. And once again, we'll see you next time.